Pie in the Sky Media. This series contains adult language and descriptions of graphic violence throughout. Listener discretion is advised. The house on Palo Duro Drive was white stucco with a tiled roof. It was 8:46 a.m., a beautiful morning in Henderson, Nevada. A gorgeous morning, bright blue skies, as a police officer made his way into the residence. It was August 7th, 2023. Nobody knew it then, but a storm was brewing. At least, an emotional one. The dread of what human beings are capable of. The officer walked into the home, and an older woman sat at a kitchen table. Her partner stood nearby. The humans were quiet, but the dogs revealed the true nature of the situation. The officer made his way through the kitchen, following the sounds coming from the bedroom, which was nearby. A big open space. Firefighters and EMTs gathered around a bed, topped with a blue and white comforter that was anything but comforting. It was stained with blood. This was a mother's worst nightmare, because it had been the older woman who had dialed 911 just minutes before.
I was downstairs, and my son is on the bed, and I opened the cover. It's all bloody. I don't know. Can you come over?
Yeah, we're coming over here. What happened to him, you know?
That's Yoko, describing her 46-year-old son, Jonathan Willett. Now, this officer's body cam records him walking up to the bed. There's blood on the carpet. A ceiling fan swirled as if it was any other day. But the lifted blanket revealed the gravity of the situation, the absolute gruesome horror of it all. There'd been a bit of a language barrier when Yoko had described to the 911 operator that her son's face and neck was missing.
On August 7th of 2023, Yoko Willett, an elderly woman, woke up to find her dead son in his room with what she referred to as his face and neck missing.
And the closer one got to the body, a blast of chemicals, most likely ammonia and bleach, was so strong it burned their nostrils. They could taste the fumes in their mouths.
And the body was laying face down on the bed, and the shoulders were kind of, if the body was laying this way, face down.
But the reality was, the man had no face. He'd been decapitated.
The shoulders were kind of even with the edge of the bed, and I think it was partially wrapped in a blanket. There didn't appear to be like signs of any struggle or anything, like there wasn't a bunch messed up. It was just laying there, like the arms weren't moved or anything. So it was pulled to the edge, and in my mind I thought, man, that was just a really clean cut, and then there was no head. Face down. Yeah, the back was facing up.
Immediately, the officer called for the scene to be locked down.
Okay. All right. Let's lock this down then.
Who could have done this? And why? I mean, just on a human level, the act of cutting off someone's head, it goes beyond the act of murder itself. And here's the thing. As first responders looked around the scene for Jonathan's head, they soon realized that whoever had done this had taken it with them.
Leo Tolstoy, perhaps one of the greatest authors of all time, in his first book, first novel, Anna Karenina, wrote, first sentence, all happy families are the same. Every unhappy family is unhappy in its own way.
Welcome back to Criminal Mischief with Carolyn and Brandon. You're listening to episode 184, Deadly Secrets.
I did see blood, but just from experience over the years, like you've seen people shot or stabbed or other lose a limb on a motorcycle accident or other type of trauma to the body, you would expect to see a lot more blood. And that was something that stuck in my head, is like, there's blood, but I would expect to see a lot more, especially under where the head would have been. Like, I don't know if, like, maybe something was put there or something to collect. It's what it appeared. Like, maybe something was put there to collect the blood, because there was just what appeared to be not as much blood that you would imagine being there.
That was Henderson Police Sergeant Forrest Shields. Now, he was no rookie. In fact, he had 28 years on the job, and this was the first time he'd been to a crime scene where the victim had been beheaded. But he'd been to many other crime scenes before, bloody crime scenes, and he was surprised that, given the gruesome nature of the scene and knowing the extreme effort it would take to cut through bone and muscle, a process which would create massive amounts of blood and forensic evidence, and yet there wasn't a lot of blood beyond what was on the mattress and the carpeting. There was no blood spatter on the walls, which surprised him.
You would expect to see some type of cast off, spatter, blood anywhere, but it appeared like a very clean scene, other than the body, the blood, the little blood. We've all seen blood, but this one wasn't like the typical fresh red blood. It was more of like a black color. Based on my experience and being at other crime scenes, with, you know, the time lapse, no, not common and not consistent with what I've seen in the past.
So it's not your everyday event that you see something like this, right?
No.
As gruesome as the decapitation was, it was also a practical clue, and a psychological one as well. Let's get to the practical first. Had the killer removed the head to hide potential forensic evidence, which could point to the killer? And as for the psychological, decapitating a human triggers a deep-seated biological aversion. It's just something that most people wouldn't be able to do. Hence, in the sergeant's 28-year career, he'd never come across a beheading. I mean, they're rare, which means it takes a certain type of person to be capable of doing it. All while the victim, Jonathan's mother and her boyfriend, had been upstairs sleeping. The act of decapitation could be a symbol of deep personal rage, of someone who wanted total control and ownership of the victim, Jonathan Willett. Or was the head removed by a serial killer who wanted to keep a head as a trophy? So many questions, but pretty much right away there were no red flags related to Jonathan Willett. He wasn't a part of some organized crime syndicate. He just seemed like a regular hardworking guy. Here's a video he posted on social media promoting his moving business.
In 2022, you better be a jack of all trades, man. Above average on everything. Don't do just one thing good. You know, you're doing the landscaping today. You better get your money, be a chameleon, and act the way you're supposed to act.
Of course, the first people to be questioned were Jonathan's mother, Yoko, and her boyfriend, Masao. Both were at home all night. And from the beginning, it seemed pretty unlikely that they would be potential suspects. However, they did have important information about what had happened the night before. According to Yoko, Jonathan lived with her along with his 7- and 9-year-old daughters. Now, the girls had moved in after he got full custody in the fall of 2022. So, nearly a year ago. I mean, they sort of still lived at Yoko's with Jonathan, because in May of 2023, after the girls had gotten out of school for the summer, they went to temporarily live with their mother, whose name is Devyn, during the school break. Now, Devyn lived about 30 minutes away. Yoko said that Devyn had actually come over the night before at around 8 p.m. That evening, Jonathan had been packing up some of his and the girls' stuff, and that Devyn was going to help him take a load of their belongings over to Devyn's house. Now, John and Devyn had broken up 5 years before, and as I mentioned, he had full-time custody of the girls since October of 2022. The trigger for that was that Devyn had been arrested after a childcare worker had reported visible bruising on the leg of her 8-year-old daughter. Ultimately, a judge awarded sole custody of their daughters to Jonathan. In August of 2023, Devyn was sentenced to 1 year of probation for the child abuse charge. And at that time, she was allowed to see the girls once a week for supervised visits, which is how the girls came to live at Yoko's house with Jonathan. But Devyn desperately wanted her daughters back full time, and Jonathan had let their girls stay with her over the summer break, temporarily. But now, Devyn and Jonathan had put together plans to reconcile, which required that he move back into Devyn's home permanently, and they would all live together. But back to that night, after dropping off this load of stuff at Devyn's, she and John returned to Yoko's, and it was about 10 p.m. when Yoko said goodnight to them and went off to bed. Now, this home is set up for a multifamily living situation. Yoko and her boyfriend's bedrooms were on the second floor, and Jonathan's bedroom was just off the kitchen on the first floor. And Yoko had explained to police that when she went to bed at around 10 p.m., that was the last time she saw her son Jonathan alive. But it wasn't the last time that she'd seen Devyn that night. It was around 1 a.m. and Yoko was thirsty, so she went downstairs to get a drink of water and was surprised to see Devyn in the kitchen, who appeared startled to see her at first. But then she explained to Yoko that John had gotten buzzed and was sleeping off the alcohol. That was the extent of their conversation. Yoko then went back upstairs to bed, but not long after, at around 2 a.m., Yoko heard a strange noise. It was a muffled, bam sound, like something had fallen from a shelf. And it wasn't just her, because Yoko heard the dogs. These are Jonathan's dogs, who were outside in the yard, and they just furiously began barking. Clearly, they'd heard something too. But not long after that, they settled down, as did Yoko, and all was quiet again. At 8 the next morning, Yoko went downstairs to start her day. Right away, she noticed things being off, little things. First of all, John's truck was still outside, and the dogs were still in the yard. Their doggy door was closed, which was not normal. There was a computer chair that had been knocked over, and then the garage door. It wasn't shut all the way. It was partially open at the bottom. Yoko walked into John's room. She knew he was supposed to take the girls to their first day of school, and had he overslept? But inside, his room was quiet. Nothing but the whirring of that ceiling fan over his bed. She could see the shape of her son beneath the covers. He was a big man, 6'4". But his feet were visible. As she walked toward the bed, alarm bells started going off when she saw that small pool of blood on the carpet and more blood on his comforter and pillow. And when she peeled back the blankets, that's when she discovered her son's body and immediately called 911. Given the brutal nature of the murder, investigators were immediately concerned about where Jonathan's children were, and so they called their mother, Devyn. Devyn lived about 30 minutes away from Henderson in Las Vegas, at a home in Porcupine Ridge. Devyn immediately said the girls were with her, safe, at home, and the detectives let them know that they were headed their way. They wanted to speak with her, because based on their conversation with Yoko, it sounded like Devyn could have been the last known person to see John alive. Did she have critical information about who had done this horrific crime? But when detectives pulled up to Devyn's place, they saw something odd. Outside of her home, there was a cell phone lying in the yard.
When they first drove up, kind of sitting in the rocks near the driveway, thought, okay, that's weird, but we're not going to touch it. We're not executing a search warrant yet. They leave it be. During this interview out in the police vehicle in front of Porcupine Rim, the girls walk up and you can hear them. Their sweet little voices, and they're like, this is Daddy's phone. This is Daddy's phone. This is why he wasn't answering. The detectives realize that's kind of important. They take the phone from the girls, or the girls give it to them, and the detectives note blood on the phone.
Not long after they retrieved this cell phone, investigators were able to execute a search warrant at Devyn's home. And tucked inside of her underwear drawer, they found knotted plastic bags. Inside of these bags, they found John's wallet, Social security card, his ID, and truck keys. Now, at this point in the investigation, this is not looking good. Why does Devyn have all of these things at her home? But investigators are still trying to understand the family dynamic, either to identify a possible suspect within his inner circle with a motive to kill him, or information that could lead them to someone outside of the family. They ask Devyn to come down to the station for an interview.
So you guys have been off and on since when?
No, we're not off and on. We're just trying to make a family work. Like, we're not physically intimate or anything like that. We're just trying to, because the girls really want us with one house, yeah. And to save some gas, so we're trying to make that.
Do you have a boyfriend or anything right now?
Yeah, I'm married.
You're married?
Yes, sir.
Alright, I was not told that information. I thought you
I'm
guys...
married, but, okay.
We were told that you guys are possibly trying to get back together.
No, we're trying to get everyone in one house and be a family.
Oh, okay.
For the girls.
So, who are you married to?
I'm married to Devyn.
Now, you might be wondering who Devyn is.
The son?
Yes, sir.
Oh, okay. So, Devyn, his son, and you are now married. How long have you been married?
Almost 2 years. And yeah, John knows.
Devyn is trying to normalize this situation, but what she just dropped was a bombshell. It's a little bit confusing, so I'm going to try to say it slow, but basically what investigators believed was going on was that Devyn and Jonathan, Devyn's father, were an estranged couple who'd been apart for 5 years, but were in the process of reconciling. That's why they'd spent the night together before John's death. They were moving some of the girls' stuff, their bunk beds, to her place in his truck, and also some of his stuff too, into Devyn's home. But as investigators asked Devyn deeper questions, they found out that at this time, John's adult son, Devyn, was not only living with Devyn, his father's ex-girlfriend that he wants to reconnect with, that they were living in the same house that John was planning on moving into. And not only that, but that John's son Devyn and Devyn, his ex-girlfriend who he wanted to reconcile with, and the mother of his 2 young daughters, well, they found out that she was married to his son, Devyn, and had been for nearly 2 years. Devyn downplayed her marriage to Devyn, and police would also interview Devyn as well. And he also claimed that this marriage was one of convenience, in name only for insurance purposes, and both denied that they were romantically involved. Of course, this new information immediately put Devyn as a potential suspect, but he had a pretty strong alibi. Remember, he lived with Devyn and his father's 2 daughters, so his half-siblings. And in fact, he had been home that night that Devyn had been hanging out with Jonathan, babysitting his sisters, and that he hadn't left the house all evening. Now, it was during the course of the investigation that detectives learned a little bit more about this family, particularly Devyn, who had gone by numerous aliases, including Tracy Tavares and also Nikki Morganchild. They also learned that in the early 2000s, Devyn began a successful career in the adult film industry. However, since she'd retired, she'd pivoted to real estate. Here's Devyn in a video promoting one of her listings.
Hey everyone, it's me, Devyn Michaels. We are on our final hour of our open house over here at 9179 Smugglers Beach Court. It's right off of Blue Diamond in El Capitan. Come say hi.
Devyn admitted to investigators that her transition into the real estate business wasn't going as well as she'd hoped.
Are you working? Is any real estate? Okay. Clearly, it's like, because, you know, for almost a full year I wasn't making any money. So I went through my savings. I had to take my stocks out just recently to get things caught up. Yeah, I've been struggling trying to get all of this back on track.
And again, it was during this interview that Devyn stuck to her story that she'd left Yoko's house at around 2 a.m. and that Jonathan was alive and well when she left. Remember, Jonathan's mother found his body roughly 6 hours later at 8 a.m. that morning. Devyn also explained that John had plans to move back in with her to help pay the bills and also so that they could be a family again for the girls. But Devyn's story wasn't heading up, and there was that incriminating evidence they'd recovered from her home. She was interviewed by police again. This time, she was confronted with the fact that investigators had found in those tied plastic bags John's wallet, his truck keys, his ID, and social security card. Remember, these items had been found hidden in her underwear drawer. And they also questioned her about her relationship with Devyn. The fact is, they slept in the same room, in the same bed. And the truth is, they'd been having an ongoing sexual relationship for years. But even though Devyn had been looked at as a suspect initially, his texts, surveillance, and time evidence ruled him out. But Devyn was still very much in the frame. In fact, a week after the murder, she failed a polygraph test and was confronted by those results. And once again, her story changed. During this interview, she described her last encounter with John. She explained that that night she was in John's room at Yoko's and was giving him a back massage on his bed. But, according to her, she claimed he began touching her and tried to coerce her into having sex, which prompted Devyn to get up, go to the fireplace, grab a candlestick, and proceed to bash him on the head until he went limp.
Let's talk about that. He's laying here, got a massage, he's rubbing on you. You said at some point you feel uncomfortable?
Yeah, he was starting to get hurt because he kept grabbing on me. I already said no, stop touching me. I hit him, he stopped touching me.
What'd you hit?
So he stabbed him, that was on the fireplace.
Devyn went on to say that she didn't intend to kill John. She just wanted to hurt him badly enough so that he'd have to go to the hospital, which would give her time to figure out their custody arrangement. And she denied beheading him. Devyn would be arrested for the murder of Jonathan Willett on August 15th, 2023. Roughly a year later, she made a deal. She pleaded guilty to second-degree murder in exchange for a sentence that would have made her eligible for parole in 15 years. But this wasn't over. During a 2025 sentencing hearing, Devyn shocked everyone by withdrawing her plea and claiming that she was innocent.
The way that they manipulated and altered and deleted things is wrong. They should not be able to do it, and they have. And for you to be able to look me in the eye knowing that the things are altered and don't know what to do anymore.
Judge, I'm not comfortable with this record.
After this outburst, the judge ordered the case to go to a full jury trial, which began in November of 2025. The prosecution laid out their case that Devyn Michaels had been in a relationship with the victim, Jonathan Willett, from 2012 to 2018. After their breakup, she married Jonathan's 26-year-old son, Devyn, in what she described as a marriage of convenience. Devyn Michaels and her husband Devyn initially told police that their marriage was one of convenience for insurance purposes, to minimize suspicion, and the prosecution's star witness, Devyn, explained the true nature of their relationship. Now remember, Devyn also went by the name of Nikki.
Eventually, after the girls are born, do you and Nikki enter into an intimate relationship?
Yes, sir.
About how old were you at that time? 19 years old?
Yes, sir.
While you were intimate with Nikki initially, was she still dating your dad? Or in a relationship with your dad?
Yes, sir.
This wasn't a marriage of convenience. The two had been having an illicit affair under Jonathan's nose for years.
Do you know if your dad found out about the intimate part of your relationship?
No, sir.
And I'm not going to say it a bunch of times, but when I say intimate, I mean sexual. We agree there?
Yes, sir.
Did there come a point in time where you all three lived under the same roof?
Yes, sir.
And was that the Magic House?
Yes, sir.
And is that when the intimate relationship started out?
Yes, sir.
You never tell him. I don't want to ask an obvious question, but why not?
I couldn't build up the courage to do it.
Okay. Of knowing your dad as you did, if he had known you were having a sexual relationship with his mother of his children, is he the type of guy that would have just said nothing and let it go?
Yes, sir.
The night before Jonathan was found murdered, Devyn said that he saw his father briefly when he walked into the garage at Devyn's home on Porcupine Rim. Jonathan was moving stuff in, but Devyn didn't try to speak to his dad. You see, even though Jonathan didn't know anything about the sexual nature of Devyn's relationship with Devyn, he had found out about their marriage a couple years before.
Get home from work. Do you remember a point in time where you saw your dad at the Porcupine Rim address?
Yes, sir.
Describe that for the jury.
So I just got off of work. I was helping with the girls with their homework, and I believe I went into the garage and I saw my father bringing over a bunk bed and a desk for the girls, and his back was turned to me, so I closed the garage door.
So you didn't talk to him?
No, sir.
How was your relationship at that point in time?
We hadn't talked for a while.
At some point prior to that, had he learned that you had actually married Nikki?
Yes, sir.
How was that conversation, or if you had a conversation about it?
He sent me a text message asking or saying, I don't know what you're doing, but it's not right. And I responded with half of what you know is true and the other half isn't.
Okay. So your dad clearly knew you were formally married?
Yes, sir.
That night when you see your dad moving the girls' stuff into the garage, you don't talk?
No, sir.
Okay. What did you do after that? Did you just go back inside or what?
I went back inside and I continued watching the movie with the girls.
Okay. Tell the ladies and gentlemen of the jury kind of how the night progressed from there.
So I continued watching the girls, watching the movie with them, and Nikki had told me that she was going to go help John move some things, and I said okay, so I stayed at the house. We continued watching the movie, and I believe when the movie was over, I had put them down to bed, and I myself went to sleep.
Do you remember where you put them down to bed?
Yes, they had individual rooms upstairs. So I took them upstairs, I had them change into the pajamas, and then went to bed.
Okay. And then where would you have gone to sleep that night?
Downstairs in the master bedroom.
Do you remember texting Nikki saying something to that effect?
I remember texting her, letting her know that I had put the girls to sleep, and I myself was going to sleep because I was working the next day.
You had worked the next day?
Yes, sir.
So I'm not going to show you a text message, but you remember sending a text message. Do you remember the time of that text message?
I believe it was 10 p.m.
Okay. And so after the text message is sent, do you remember receiving a response from Nikki, or you just go to bed?
I just went to bed.
Okay. And if I didn't ask you, where did you go to sleep?
Downstairs in the master bedroom.
The normal place you sleep.
Yes,
when you went to bed, was Nikki home?
No, sir.
And that would be why you sent her the text, correct?
Yes, sir.
Do you remember waking up at any point after falling asleep that night?
I remember waking up around 2 to her getting into bed, and since I had work early in the morning, I didn't ask anything of her. I just looked over, I saw her, and I went back to sleep.
This was, to you, a normal night, right? You would have no reason to ask her anything, right?
No, because if they were moving things around, they're just working through the night to try to get it all.
Okay.
Even though Jonathan wasn't speaking to his son, he still wanted to get back together with Devyn. And this co-living arrangement was the only way that Devyn would be able to get her daughters back. Jonathan's offer to move back in to reunite the family meant he would pay the bills and that the two would resume a physical relationship. But Jonathan moving in would mess with Devyn's secret household romance with Devyn. And the prosecution said that was Devyn's motive for murdering Jonathan because she didn't want him moving back in with her and their daughters. She wanted to continue to live her fantasy life with his son, Devyn. The prosecution laid out that Devyn was the only person with the opportunity to murder Jonathan because she was with him during that window of time that they believe the killing took place between 10 p.m. and 2 a.m. They presented Devyn's multiple inconsistencies in her statements about missing items, blood evidence, and her timeline, and that she'd eventually admitted to hitting Jonathan in the head, but couldn't account for key hours during the night. Forensic testimony also indicated that Jonathan had been decapitated after death and that a knife and a mechanical saw had been used, that these murder weapons were never found.
We felt like it was dumped right there.
Why do you say that?
There wasn't any signs of a struggle. There wasn't any signs that he had been moved. There wasn't, if anything, we hypothesized whether or not he'd been rolled from back to front, but that was the extent of the movement that we felt that he had gone through.
Did you smell anything while you were in the scene?
It was overwhelmingly, the chemical smell was overwhelming, burning our eyes, burning our nostrils. It was overpowering, the chemical smell that was coming specifically from this area. That smell was present throughout this room, but the closer you got to this area of the victim, when you walked around the foot of the bed and came towards this area, it was overpowering.
Another thing, the killer had poured bleach and ammonia all over Jonathan's body to destroy evidence. However, Devyn's DNA was recovered from the knot on the plastic bags that contained Jonathan's belongings. And his phone, which had been recovered in her driveway, it did have blood on it, and that blood was a match for Jonathan's. Now, Devyn's defense was that she didn't murder Jonathan, that it was Devyn who had killed his own father in an act of jealous revenge, that he was the one that didn't want his father moving in, taking over, and had no intention of losing Devyn. The defense's theory was that after Devyn returned home, sometime after 2 a.m., that's when Devyn snuck out, went to Yoko's, and killed his father. Even though digital and tower forensics didn't place Devyn near the crime scene, but where he said he was, at Devyn's house watching the girls. So the trial lasted for 2 weeks, but the jury came back with a verdict in less than 2 hours. Guilty. In January 2026, Devyn Michaels was sentenced to 28 years to life for the first-degree murder and post-mortem beheading of her ex-boyfriend, Jonathan Willett. Up next on Criminal Mischief bonus content, my co-host Brandon Morgan and I will discuss the case in more detail. And as always, thanks for listening. From Pie in the Sky Media, Criminal Mischief is an EVO production, recorded live in the beautiful Pacific Northwest. We're produced by Brandon Morgan and myself, music by Soundstripe. For EVO Creative, I'm Carolyn Ossorio, your writer and host.